we in the business might say, it's that time of year again. That time of year again. 3 days until I become legally an adult. I've had a lot of people over the years tell me that I'm an old soul, especially old people. You know, people in their 70s, 60s. No one in their 80s, I don't think. I've had people close to their 80s tell me, but no one in their 80s. Jesus, what was that sound? That was quite a strange squeaking sound to have been made. But, yeah. I heard a squeaking sound. It kind of freaked me out there for a moment. But, you know, had people tell me that I'm an old soul for a long time. That, my dad, every now and again, he calls me an old man. He told me, I think you're just born as an old man. And he's told me that many times as of late. Especially because I've been getting these, like, back pains and stuff these days. It's harder and harder, you know? Harder and harder for me to do physical stuff because I just spend so much time in the chair, you know? But is what it is. It's exactly what it is. I'm getting older. Like, I've always felt kind of old. And I was thinking about this, like, my aunt, she told me that I had to grow up faster than most people who she had ever spoken to, or something to that effect, because I had to take care of my mom for a long time. Because, you know, my mom would be going through her borderline personality disorder, psychotic shit. And so had to take care of her for a while, you know? I had to do finances, I had to take care of that. I had to take care of the houses that I would stay in. There was a time when I had to go out every single day and look for a job. You know, get up 7 a.m., come home at like 11. Was all I would do. There was a lot of stuff I had to take care of for her. Just because she, you know, was too mentally ill to do it. Well, there was a time when she tried to commit suicide, you know. She threatened to jump out in the street when I was 16. And almost did it. But I had convinced her not to. You know, it's stuff like that. And I remember back and I, you know, wonder why I have the personality that I do, and I've been able to do the things that I do. Some of them, at least, are able to look at them from this perspective because of experiences like that. You know, having to take up after parents, you know, having to take their place when they didn't really have the ability to do it themselves, you know. And I look at the person who I was in, and in some ways it almost feels like I used to be more adult than I am now. That's not necessarily right. Like, I feel like I've had more adult experiences now as I'm getting older. The kind of experiences that adults would typically partake in. But when I look at, like, who I used to be and the position that I used to be in, it feels like I was a lot more responsible, or I had more responsibility than I do now. And is that maturity? You know, does that play a part? Am I less mature now because I don't have those responsibilities? I don't know. Everyone's told me I'm an old man my whole life, you know? And maybe it's just because I have a no bullshit attitude. I've never took bullshit. I just can't. I'm too tired for it. Maybe that's the vibe old people give off. You know, old people, they don't give a shit because they're almost dying. You know, I felt like I'm almost dying for my whole fucking life. You know? I came close a couple times. I see what it is. It's a branch. It's a branch up there moving around making a squeaking sound. You know, the first time I tried to kill myself was when I was 10 years old. I just continuously banged my head against the wall over and over again, desperately wanting to end my own life. Not too long later, I tried drowning myself in a swimming pool, and that didn't work out very well. When I was 14, I tried to overdose on pills. When I was 15, I pointed a gun at myself that just happened to not work because it was too old. Lucky occurrences I seem to get myself into. You think I would have been able to do it at this point, you know? You think I would have been successful. I look at all the times, I was thinking about this just today, all the times like I've just walked into the street with, no indication to anyone that I was walking there, and all the times I could have been ran over. I just didn't care. I'd just be looking down, I'd be so depressed, I'd be in my own world. I just wouldn't be looking at the road, I just didn't care. All those times. I could have gotten ran over, people would stop, just a little bit before hitting me. People would stop. I'd get out of the way really quickly, just before someone would have hit me. I didn't care. Old people don't care. They don't have time for your bullshit because they know their clock is ticking. And I felt like my clock is a bit overdue. Is that me being edgy saying that? Probably. But there's a place that edginess comes from. I haven't wanted to be alive, for a lot of my life. And I don't know how to describe that to people. Like I have PTSD. I have, it's interesting, they clarified post-traumatic stress disorder with depersonalization and derealization symptoms with panic attacks. That's a lot of clarifications to give. But that's what the paper said after I got my diagnosis, is I have PTSD. And it kind of makes sense. I can go from being hyper-vigilant and guarded to engaging in huge risks and being a fucking asshole the moment that I start dissociating from the situation. Like I remember back to something that happened when I was younger, or one of the traumas that I had been through. And I feel shitty for that entire week. I just want to kill myself because I remember that one scenario as it had happened, I've been struggling this with my whole life. I can't sleep most nights because I'm thinking about the nightmare that I might have if I do remember my dream. It's just about every single dream I get is another nightmare about stuff that used to happen. And as soon as I wake up, of course, I get a panic attack. There was a time when I was 16 years old. When I was 16 years old, I got addicted to the anti-anxiety medication Xanax, or Aprazolam, or whatever it's called. Kind of sort of the SoundCloud rapper meme. If you wanted to call this video edgy or call me edgy, there you go. It's the SoundCloud rapper meme, Xanax. I got addicted to it. 16 years old. And it was because I just had these panic attacks when I kept waking up from one of these nightmares of something that had happened in the past. And the only way I could sort of numb the feeling was with Xannies. It's, sort of the meme. Xanny, make it go away. I'm committed, not addicted, but it keep controlling me. Oh my fucking God. It's like this fucking SoundCloud rapper tier meme shit, But that's who I was. And I mean, nowadays, I look back at what was my last addiction. Well, it was oxycodone and hydrocodone, opiates, opium. Ooh, sweet opium. It's the last thing I was addicted to. What was the reason for that? I was forced back into school. I had to go to school for, however many months it was. I kind of try to blank it out of my memory, like a lot of things at this point. But I was forced back into school after, over 2 years of not going. After all that time when I was in school, hating the act of being there, fucking hating it. I wanted to kill myself almost every day I went to school. That's how bad it was. And so I was forced to go back after all this time of being free, being away from it. I was forced to go back. one of the biggest causes of suicidality in me throughout my entire life has always just been school. It was like that when I was a little kid because I never wanted to do my work. It's like that with me now, and it was like that with me before. It's just a continuous cycle of just never wanting to be in school. And so, like, when I look at, me in December of 2019, and I had just gotten this kidney stone. I got all these pain meds from the doctors because of my kidney stone, and I could just get high all the time because I had all of these pain meds for my kidney stone. And it was long after the kidney stone had passed. I just had so many of them. I could just keep using them. Um, and I was ready to fucking die. I was ready to fucking die. I didn't want to go back to school. I didn't care if I got addicted. I didn't care about harm reduction. Like, I just didn't give a shit. It's the same thing of when I got addicted to Xans, like, now I can give a shit. It's not that I lack the ability to think in the long term. It's not that I lack the ability to do harm reduction. I can do those things. It's just that when I didn't care, when I did not care what happened to me if I lived or died, it was way easier to disregard all of those practices. Being responsible with use is not that hard. It's really not. I can do it now, and I do all the time, and am very responsible because I can look at my future and say, I do want to live. I can look at my future and say, there are good things that are coming down the pike. Maybe, there's at least a hope there because I'm not in school. But when I was in school, after a couple months of that, I was just ready to go. I did not care what happened. Um, you know, didn't matter if I got addicted or not, or how painful it would be to withdraw from it, and it was very painful. It felt like just about the worst flu I had ever had. I was throwing up all the time. I was getting tremors. It wasn't fun, but that was the experience, and I'd never do that again. I'd never get addicted again because I know how that feels. It's really the same thing with benzodiazepines, with Xans, is that I've used benzos for a number of times in the last, like, year and 3/4 since having gotten addicted before, and I haven't gotten addicted to them again. You know why? It's because I use responsibly. And I think enough in the long term to not do that. And I know how it feels to be addicted, and I don't want that. I smoked cigarettes for 2 years. I smoked cigarettes from age 15 to age 17. Cigarettes are considered to be as addictive as cocaine, and as addictive as heroin even, or at least smoked heroin. I bet you didn't know that. The receptors that are, or the receptors that cocaine has affinity towards that build the potential for addiction after the first time that you use coke are the same receptors that are being channeled when you smoke a cigarette or when you just use a nicotine product. So it's highly, highly addictive, like one of the most addictive drugs that exists is nicotine. I smoked cigarettes for 2 years without getting addicted. I was never addicted. I smoked on and off only a couple times in a week. Sometimes I'd go a couple weeks without smoking. I never smoked too much because I knew I would get this really bad tolerance and that I would just want to smoke all the time and that I would be physically dependent on it. I had the foresight at 15 years old to realize that. And so, of course, by disseminating that information logically, I didn't get addicted. It's really not that hard to figure out. If 15-year-old Star can figure that out, so can you, and so can I right now. And so it's always a matter of choice, Whether or not you get addicted is always a matter of choice. And I made my choice with Xans at that time. I made my choice with Oxys at that time because I just didn't care anymore. Just didn't want to be alive, man. Has been the story of my life, just not wanting to be alive. And I don't know what the future is going to be. I don't know what the future is going to be. I had a pretty good 2 months in January and February. Some rocky moments. I was afraid of going back to school. That was really the main source of my depression. But other than that, I was doing pretty good for those 2 months. Pretty damn good, I'd say. But those fears would creep in and out. Having to go back to school. Having to go to work one day. The source of my ire. The source of my pain. Responsibility. Can't do it. And these people have the goal to call me adult. Jeez. these people call me an old man. No, I'm a fucking man-child. I guess I can call myself that now, because I'll be 18 in, like 3 days. Fucking man-child. I just want to play video games all the time. Who does that? Who, for their entire life, has only wanted to play video games and read books about fucking obscure historical knowledge that no one gives a shit about but me? And I guess, I don't know, random Russia files on Twitter. Like, no one gives a shit. Normal people, no one gives a shit about the interests I have. Like, I sit down reading fucking pharmacological papers about 3-MeO-MIPT and shit. Like, no one even knows what that is. But I'm sitting here trying to decipher all of these chemical formulas just to learn about, the finer nuances of, oh, how does this one work? Gotta catch 'em all, bro. I'm Pokemon trainer. Gotta catch 'em all, bro. How does this one work? Like, what am I doing? Why are these the things I'm interested in? Why do I like writing so much? Why, out of all of the things that I could have gravitated towards, it's making videos. Making videos has just always been the thing that I've done. Taking pictures or doing photography has just always been the thing that I've done. Writing has just always been the thing that I've done. Why is it that I'm stuck with these things? Why can't I just do something that makes money? Why can't I be interested in something that makes money? Why do I have to be obsessed with reading random fucking primary sources from the Soviet archive? Like, what? What? Why? Why am I interested in that? Why am I interested in the science of how all these fucking random ass drugs work? Spending hours of research on a lot of stuff that I'm probably not even going to have access to for, like a year or something, or quite some time. I'm just interested in it. Just always been interested in it. Why can I tell you hundreds of prices of random video games and exactly what those games are like, exactly what they do, the staff behind them, the people, the companies that worked on them, and the cultural context that those existed in? I'm a fucking catalog for just about every single console you can think of, and why, I guess I could be a pretty decent salesman. If I worked at a video game store, I would have no problem. I'd never have to look anything up because every single video game would just be in my memory. But, what can I do with these skills? Like, I'm not a particularly intelligent person in the classical sense. On my own psychological evaluation, they told me that my mental functioning and educational capacities, intellectual capacities, are borderline impaired. That's not the wording I'm using, that's the wording they used. They said average to borderline impaired. And it kind of makes sense, given just how resistant I am to the education system, and have always been, and that I have these fucking obscure, random ass interests that don't make any money. That my interests, people don't value this shit. Like, no one cares. No one cares about the stuff that I'm interested in, And I feel like it's just always going to be like this. You can't really change what you're interested in. You're just kind of given it. This has always been the stuff that I've liked. And I can't change these lifelong obsessions into new things out of thin air that just magically make money. I've never liked school. I've never liked society. I've never liked doing work, And these are the things that are required of me. These are the things that they need me to do. If I ever want to get the fuck out of this country, these are definitely the things that they need me to do. Or else I'm just fucking stuck here. Just fucking stuck here. You know? Living with my dad, I don't mind that. It's not a problem with him. You know, there's no shame in living at home. I like living here. But it's, what the fuck am I gonna do? Well, what the fuck am I gonna do as I get older? What's the future? Future problematic. No plans, no future. No prospects whatsoever. Nothing I like makes money. I refuse to do anything that I don't like. And this appears to be where I'm gonna be. This is where I was. When I turned 14, I thought about this exact thought. When I turned 13, no lie, no cap, I thought about this exact thought. When I turned 15, when I turned 16, when I turned 17. Oh, you knew that if you were around when I turned 17. And now when I turn 18. Exact same train of logic. Society ain't for me, and I ain't for it. Great fucking world we live in, right? It's amazing. I'll get by somehow. I'll figure something out. You know, like I genuinely don't mind the idea of being homeless, for example. I just don't. I was homeless very briefly. It was sort of like, I've only ever like slept outside like once, and it was in a tent. But it was mainly, you know, living in and out of hotels that other people had paid for, or that like we were just like barely scratching, you know, scathing the income that we had to do so. But, you know, there was no home, there was no prospect of me having a home. Just because I wasn't sleeping outside every single night, didn't make it to where I didn't have, you know, less of a home. And so it was pretty nerve-wracking. But I had learned to accept the idea of being homeless in that time. And I had, you know, when I was moving across all those different states, living out of all those different shelters with my mom, I had to accept the inherent instability surrounding that, because she was going to yell at a staff member. She always did. She always blew up at the staff, and then I'd have to come in and play fucking peacemaker to try and convince her to stop, you know, a borderline assaulting the people who were working at a women's care facility, who were trying to help her with their own time and their own money. But, you know, being the ungrateful person that she is, she just has to blow up at every single one of them. You know, I've been prepared for the idea for a while. But being homeless ain't so bad. Get a tent, you know, get a local shelter that you can sleep out in, you know, every now and again. Learn how to keep warm. Won't be so bad when the day inevitably comes. I've been thinking about this for, Jesus Christ, since I was like 11 years old. Because even back then I knew that I wasn't going to have a future. Hell, I mean, even when I was like 8, because I would cheat on my schoolwork all the time back then. And my parents would always tell me, in order to have a future and in order to get ahead in life, you have to have education. Because my dad dropped out of high school when he was 15, you know? So education there was an emphasis on it, because, you know, they wanted me to have a better life than they had. You know, my mom always wanted to be a teacher. She always wanted to write books.